Thank you for being here. Thank you for making time to be here today. I'm Ariella Mortwitz, the founding director of SVIVAH. It is wonderful to see so many familiar faces, so many new faces. Please, if I don't know you, stick around at the end and introduce yourself. I would love, it would be so sad for me if you came and I didn't get to know you. I will definitely stick around at the end. So please stay hi. And if we do know each other, stick around and say hi too. 30 seconds about SVIVAH. SVIVAH is about creating a more nourishing communal faith experience for Jewish women, where we define both Jewish and women very broadly. If you want to be here with us, we want you to be here with us and welcome. We love that we are multi-generational and diverse in our backgrounds and where we come from and who we are. We come together in celebration and support of women, our strengths, our unique perspectives, and our ways of contributing to the world. While there may be some familiar faces in many of these boxes here today, I guarantee that many of us don't know each other. So I will encourage you to get to know someone. If someone shares something in the chat or says something, introduce yourself. I can guarantee that anyone who is gathered and drawn to this conversation is worthwhile knowing. But that is actually what makes SVIVAH's gathering so unique and so special, the idea of actually having us come together and meet one another and actually be able to meet new people, even through our little boxes. The inspiration for today, which I hope you can see, like I'm a little bit jumping out of my seat because I'm so excited that we're actually doing this. I cannot believe it. Came because of actually the timing of Shira's book release, which I have right here, and I'll talk about more. But I've been a fan of Shira's for years. We met each other when she had just started the Layers Project. She had a few blog posts and was finding ways to showcase the most beautiful pieces of Jewish womanhood, things that we didn't often share or talk about in community. And her work resonated with me on so many levels. Layers. I was going to throw in a pun there. I had to. But her work has been such a source of pride and inspiration to me to see how far you've taken this incredible labor of love. When I got my copy of this book, I was immediately struck by how weighty it was. It's a heavy book, and it's not light. It feels heavy. And I realized that that's exactly what Shira does. She gives our stories, our lives, weight and value, and she makes them important and significant. And when so much of society belittles our lived experience, or there's so many times in life when we want or feel like we have to make ourselves smaller, what Shira does, she comes and she lifts our stories up and makes them significant and beautiful. I actually have a confession, Shira. I don't think I've shared this with you. You and Rachel Herkman asked me many times to contribute something to the Layers Project. And I did. I shared one piece that was actually more reflection, something with me as the observer of other people. But I'm actually still writing the real Layers piece for you. It's on draft 26. But it's so much speaking to the core, just feeling like I can enter into this group of people. I feel like it had to be so authentic and so real that it speaks so much to the core of who I am that even just thinking about it and talking about it right now, my heart is like constricting protectively. So sharing stories is a complete act of bravery. And one day, maybe I will be that brave. But today, we actually get to hear from some wildly brave women who I am so glad to welcome. Michal and Shara and Rebecca, and of course, Shira, thank you for being here today. I'm hoping that our takeaway from hearing you is to be able to look back on this past year, you know, Rosh Hashanah is around the bend and all, and find our own stories and give them weight. Realize how valuable they are to us and how valuable and precious they can be actually if we give them to others. So I hope that we can be able to get a little bit of a glimpse into Shira's talent at not finding exceptional humans to highlight, but instead being so gifted at taking the exceptional in each one of us and bringing that out into the light and making it so magnificent. Today is a nod to the upcoming month of Elul, which is a time of reflection before we walk into the high holidays. And it's a chance to be reflective of our own stories of this past year and how they can become sources of empowerment, both to us and to others. So before I get to hand over the microphone to Shira, I just want to go over our SVIVAH rules of how we come together as a community. Hannah will share that in a minute, but quickly, it's just respect everyone here. Show up as your fabulous self with your hot mess, laundry piles, your lunch, your coffee, whatever it is. This is like Vegas. We know I'm waiting for someone to actually be Zooming from Vegas, but whatever happens here stays here. Please introduce yourself to someone new, compliment their artwork behind them, or tell them you have a similar sweater or that they look like your third cousin from Minnesota. And just say hi, because I can guarantee that all of us are worth knowing. Also, if you don't mind, please take a minute to make sure your name is listed as you would listed on a name tag if we were together in person, and chat away. If you're on your computer or even if you're on your phone, we're going to use the chat today so that we can connect with each other and talk and discuss while our speakers are speaking. And we can start off by doing that if you don't mind, introducing yourself, tell us where you're Zooming from, and if you're comfortable sharing what brought you to today's conversation. With that, I get to introduce the fabulous Shira Lankin Sheps, Michal Kaye, Shara Shitri, and Rebecca Spiewak, and I'll start by fangirling all over the fabulous Shira and ask her to share her story and what she learned that led her to the Layers Project and Layers, the book. You'll see her bio in the chat, and she will start us off, and I promise I will let you all know where and how you can buy this fabulous book.
I don't know how to thank you for those words, for all of the words that you've ever offered me. It's incredibly meaningful to me and humbling, and I'm just so grateful to be here with this beautiful community that you've created. And I'm especially thrilled to be here with these fabulous, wonderful, very close friends of mine, the women of the Layers book, Rebecca, Michal, and Shara, and I'm so honored that they're joining me here so that we can talk to you about this work that we've done. So basically, how did Layers start is pretty simple. The Layers project started because I needed it. I needed it more than I can express. You know, I was in my mid-20s and I was experiencing chronic illness, and I felt really alone. I felt really ashamed because I'm a perfectionist and I'm a go-getter and I'm full of energy, you might tell. And I was completely bedridden. I was literally, I couldn't get out of bed, and I was like 25 years old, and it was terrible, and it was so excruciating. And what was the most painful was all the things that I couldn't be, and how othered I felt from the community. I really felt like I couldn't be myself. I couldn't talk about it. I really kept it a secret, which was really terrible, because it was terrible because we didn't get the support that we needed, not emotionally nor practically. And so one day during this period, I was, you know, in a lot of physical pain, and I was writing a lot of very tortured, kind of dark writings, and I was submitting to a bunch of different Jewish magazines, and I wanted it to be anonymous because I was too ashamed to have put my name on it, to say, you know, this is me. I couldn't own my story. And they said, hey, Shira, we love what you're writing, but you got to put your name on it. You got to stand up. You gotta own your story. And I didn't even understand the power of what that meant then. But when I was ready to do that, I decided to do it on my own, and I created a blog. It's called Emunat Chabalelot. And I wrote this post, and I posted on Facebook, and I said, hey, I'm sick and I don't know what's really wrong with me, and I don't know what my trajectory is going to be, and I don't know what my life is going to look like, but I am determined to make meaning of illness, and I'm determined to learn lessons, and I don't know what this is going to be, but here it is. I'm getting rid of the shame. I'm putting it out there. And then within a few minutes, I got this deluge of love and support, and people saying, hey, I've got that too, or I've got this, I've got that. And all of a sudden I became this address for people to share their pain. Now, it happened to be that I graduated from social work school right before I got sick, so I had the capacity to contain all of this pain. But when I got a little bit better, and when I say a little bit, I mean not so much better, I decided that in order to give back to my community, I wanted to do something. And at the time I was working as a photographer because I was determined to just get up out of bed and do anything, create anything, tell any kind of story that I could, and capture those moments. And one day I posted on Facebook and I said, you know, I'm looking to create this photo project where I interview Jewish women and we talk about the challenges and triumphs of their lives. We talk about stigmatized issues and taboo topics. Would anybody be interested in doing this with me? And then within 1 hour, 20 women had reached out to me. And I was like, wait a second, there's something here. And I didn't even realize at the time that the world was so ripe, our world was so ripe for storytelling, for the stories of women. And so basically, I launched the Layers Project, and it took off, and it took off a life on its own because people were really, truly ready to listen. And so the Layers Project became a full-fledged magazine in 2018. And then I moved to Israel, I think the following summer, and began writing this amazing book, which I will tell you about in a little bit, but 34 stories of Jewish women living in Israel, average women who live their lives extraordinarily, profiles, photographs, real stories on a myriad of topics: pregnancy loss, infertility, mental health, suicidality, refugee status, the Holocaust, being a soldier, the list goes on and on and on and on. Anyway, that's who I am. That's why I do what I do. And I'm really excited today to be talking to the incredible women on this panel. First, I just want to give you some information. The topics that we'll be discussing today, we will be discussing infertility and IVF, pregnancy loss, ectopic pregnancy, and caregiving. So just keep in mind that's what we're discussing today. Our first panelist for the day, I would love to talk to Michal. Michal and I are going to talk a little bit about owning your story and how, you know, this topic was we asked Michal to talk about this because we really felt like what Michal shared in her chapter was so rich with this message. And so Michal, tell us a little bit about what you share in the book.
So I share my journey into trying to become a single mother. I'm 45 now, but when I was 39, Israel pays for you to have babies. And I wasn't at the point to freeze my eggs. It was past that. And so my option was to try and have a baby. And this was from 39 to about 42 was my process. And in that time, I went through 7 IVFs, well, 2 IUIs and 5 IVFs. And then what's not in the book is 2 egg donations that I did in Cyprus, none of which worked. And so we talk a little bit about that. We talk a lot about that, or a little bit about that process.
Michal, tell us a little bit, you know, you shared that your story unfolded in a way that you kind of didn't plan. What did you think? What did you hope for at the time?
You know, I didn't know, like, there's a lot of things medically that I didn't even know about my own body that when I started the process became apparent. You know, I had a regular period my entire life. There was nothing to, you know, I had PCOS, but there was nothing to think that I wasn't going to get pregnant and have a baby, and it was going to be this sort of easy process. And then I was going to be a single mom, and that was going to be the hard part. Like, that was going to be like, do I stay in Israel? Do I go back to Canada? Will I have twins? Will I, like, we all have in his mind this like prayer that, well, of course, this should be easy. Why should this be hard at 38, 39 years old? My mother, you know, had what we call it's halachic infertility, where basically she goes to the mikvah, but she was going on the wrong day. So it took 4 years for her to have me. And then after that, she had kids, and my siblings all were fine. Like there was no issue to think that I would have a problem. So I thought this was gonna be easy, you know, IUI, get pregnant, IVF, get pregnant. That was the hope.
Yeah. So what happened? Could you tell us a little bit about how you felt when the IVF process didn't work?
At the end or during?
At the end.
At the end.
At the end.
So I actually didn't realize the effect it had on me for quite a bit of time. I think anyone who goes through IVF, as much as the nurses tell you that, oh yeah, the drugs are going to be out of your system, you're your next period. After 5 IVF attempts, pretty much one after the other, there's not a chance in hell that those drugs were out of my system after my next period. I think I would say about a year was the first time I felt what I would say hormonally normal. And at that point I had hit rock bottom. I honest to God have no idea how I got up in the morning, how I put clothes on in the morning, how I functioned. My doctors always said like I must have some reserve of iron somewhere because I'm like my iron is very low, but I must have had some reserve of energy on it. I don't know. Like I was depressed. I was emotionally and physically depressed. I was not a functioning human being, but I functioned because I ran a business and I had a life.
Michal, I remember meeting you shortly after this period. And I remember the first iteration of our chapter had a very different ending. And we luckily had the opportunity before it was printed, 6 months ago, to revise the ending of your chapter. And so I think to me, from my perspective, I think that what you were able to achieve was so incredibly empowering. I would love it if you could share with this amazing audience a little bit about how you took control back of your narrative, of your story, of your life.
Sure. After I did the 2 attempts with someone else's eggs and that didn't work, I had made the decision that after 9 attempts of trying to get pregnant, that as a single person at 42 years old, I was done. I was physically done injecting myself, putting myself through that. And I just needed to sort of say, you know what, I tried and I need to move on. And I had the tools I thought I had the tools to get better naturally. I decided not to go back to therapy because I just couldn't talk about fertility anymore. I was just like, after 2-3 years in it, I was very much done. And I worked through it. And I, honest to God, can't tell you, I think when Shira wrote to me and she's like, Michal, I was reading your ending and I how are you doing? How's Corona? How's everything? And I'm an event planner. So if you can imagine that my life was, so in July of Corona, like what, 5 months, 6 months into what is now our whatever reality, I hit rock bottom. And I think that was hit rock bottom of everything. Like, it was like everything. It was everything I hadn't dealt with for the last 2 years. And I just sort of just pushed under a carpet and just didn't want to deal with. And then Corona, and then losing literally my business in a matter of 6 months and not knowing what was going to be the end. Because we all thought, oh, the summer would be fine and we will be back to normal. And it wasn't. And I worked through it. I can't even explain. It was this huge mindset shift. It was, and at this point I hadn't even started getting healthy. This was just like, all right, it's August, last year. I'm not this person. I'm not this person to be sad, to be upset. But I need to figure out a way to work through my depression without it killing me. I'm not a person who takes pills, nothing against pills. It's just not where I want to go. And I worked through it and I started to manifest and I started to just really mindset. There's this huge mindset shift. And so when Shira said, what's the ending? Let me know what the ending is. And I was like, wait, I don't even recognize this person on the piece of paper. This was July, November. In September, I started my new, my journey into a healthier me. And November, she's like, read this. And I was like, wait, I don't even know who this person is on this piece of paper. Like, it was like, I called her up. I'm like, no. And I was like, yeah, we got to change this, because the shift was just, and it really was. And now when I get depressed, I'm very aware of it, and I work my way through it, and I don't push it under the carpet. I internalize it, I process it, and I let it go through my body, because now I've learned how to handle it. And I honest, as much as we all hate Corona and it messed up all of our lives, for me, actually, it really, I think, allowed me to mourn that I didn't get that chance to do, because I just sort of was like, okay, well, it didn't work, let's go on with life kind of feeling.
Michal, first off, that's amazing. And I can't say what it was like to watch you go through that process and how inspiring it was for me. I know, and I tell Michal every day, I'm like, you inspire me every day when she's working on herself and she has all these really healthy habits. She's drinking, I'm drinking, half because of Michal. Okay, that's that. The last question that I have for you is, what role has putting your story in this book, what role has it played in your ability to own your story, and continue to make good choices for yourself, and to continue to live your life in the way that you want to manifest, in the way that you want to be?
I think it's given me, I was always a person who talked about a lot of things. I never sort of shied away from sharing my story. And then I got hurt through the IVF process of unfortunately, people talking about me behind my back, because I was older than a lot of my friends, and I lived in a single community, and people like talking about people. And so I stopped talking. And so sharing this story was very much like, well, I looked at it as therapy, and it really was. And so what's interesting is like, when all my friends read this story, is a lot of my friends didn't even know. I didn't even tell people about how many times I did IVF and what I went through. My mother was very pleased that she knew all the story, that there was nothing she didn't know. She was very like, oh, that's good, we have a good relationship. It was like, so that was good. And my dad wasn't, yeah, it was interesting. He's like, am I really that insensitive? And I'm like, yeah. But he's working on it, we hope. He's downstairs. I have no idea if he can hear me or not. But I think it was freedom. It was freedom. So when I say, like, I thought of, okay, going into adoption, and I say very much so that, like, it could happen, but for me, I've chosen to say it's not the right path for me. I do not want to have to go through the process in Israel and be turned down. I think I've had enough. I'm not a person, I never was a person who's like, oh, I need to succeed. But when failures happen, it kills it. And especially when you've gone through what a lot of us have gone through, I don't know if I can handle any more of that. And in regards to dating, it's very lovely to tell people, and they like, oh, this lovely man, he's never been married and he's in his 50s and whatever, and you want to go out with him? And I'm like, no, I only date guys who are divorced or widowed with children. And it is so empowering. I can't even explain it. It just happened at my niece's wedding. It was so empowering to say that. And they're like, well, if you change your mind, I'm like, that's very nice, I'm not going to. So it's given me this, like, I think it's added to this whole shift in me, this, I wasn't scared that people were going to read this. Like, I really wasn't. I was ready for this to be public and to be out there, and for people to ask me questions. And the response that I'm getting from people who I've known, since they were little, who've gone through their own things, and who send me screenshots of their experiences and the conversations they're now having in their communities on Facebook is mind-blowing. And so it's just empowering.
What else can you say? Michal, thank you so much for being so open, and for being so introspective in a way that is modeling for all of us. I really appreciate you being here and sharing in this book, obviously, and for our friendship. And so thank you very much, Michal. Okay, Shara. Shara's in the hot seat. So Shara,
yay, my turn.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about
Hi.
what you shared in this book. What do we talk about?
Okay, so I'm Shara. I live in Modi'in. I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for joining. What do we talk about in our chapter? So, it's one chapter in your book, but it's an entire book of mine that I live in constantly, all the time. Okay, so my husband has multiple sclerosis, and was diagnosed at age 29, about 20 years ago, actually, almost 20 years ago. And it started out, we were living here in Israel, and started out with a strange symptom with his eyes going in two different directions, and really strange. He got that checked out, and we went, he bounced around from one kind of doctor to another kind of doctor until he got a diagnosis of probable multiple sclerosis, which, we were in our late 20s. We really didn't know what that meant. The only experience I had with MS was the MS readathon. For those of you who are around my age, you might know what I'm talking about. The dog with a magnifying glass, and it looked like little Sherlock Holmes in the book jackets that you were raising money for something called MS, which no one knew anything about. So that was really all it was. And my husband knew even less than I did. My husband is a Moroccan Israeli, first generation Israeli. And with that comes a lot of identity issues over his diagnosis. For a few years, really, he was able to ignore it and pretend it really didn't exist. And we lived our lives and tried to make a regular life for ourselves. My daughter was born right after the diagnosis, our first child. And, we would spend very exhausting nights taking care of my daughter. Usually, mostly I would get up, my husband went to work the next morning. And when he came home from work, I would be completely done and, would try to punt him the baby so that I could go have a moment, take a shower, rest or something. And he would just collapse on the couch and basically pass out. Like he could not be responsible for a child. And I would get angry. I would get angry at him because we had no idea. Neither one of us knew that this was the intense fatigue of MS. We weren't given a handbook. We had no idea really what to expect and what was going on. And also for the first symptom that I think never came back again, it went away and never returned. And still, the next 20 years, it never happened again. So we didn't know what other symptoms to expect and what to know and what we should know. So, the fatigue thing was just, I thought he was just being and unmentionable when he came home and wouldn't take over for me, or couldn't take over for me. But we didn't really know much in the beginning. And throughout the years, it turned into relapsing remitting MS into secondary progressive, which means the disease is progressing, and his situation just kind of gets worse and worse and worse. But there's no there's no relapse and then remission. There's no more remission, and there are no relapses. It's more just like a steady decline. So when we made Aliyah, we came back to Israel, I should say, made Aliyah in the 90s, and he's Israeli. But once my daughter was born, we left and lived in New York for 8 years. We came back 9 years ago, mostly to come back and be. We always planned to come back, and. He came back and he was walking with a walker with a cane at the time. And then he just, went from a cane to a walker to, he's an architect, and he was on construction sites and soon realized that was not something that was not sustainable. He was, climbing on roofs and falling, and not a good thing. So he stopped working. I, started working from home a little bit here and there, but very quickly he really wasn't able to work anymore at all, because he couldn't commit to. Part of having MS is the extreme fatigue that goes along with it, a lot of pain, and just you can't really plan your day. You can't say, okay, I'll meet you at 9:00 in the morning or even 2 in the afternoon, because you don't know if you're going to be able to get up that day, or if you're going to be able to have to get into bed later in the afternoon. So that was happening a lot, and he was realizing that he could not commit to projects. I stopped working a few years ago, and he's currently in a wheelchair full time. Needs help getting dressed, needs help preparing food, showering, daily usual kind of basic things. And he's very isolated. He's, he feels like this year and a half of Corona, everyone kind of joined him in his isolation, and people understand more what it's like. He's a very, very social individual and gets all of his energies from other people. So that's tough. When he's had visitors, and he has a pretty steady schedule of visitors who come, whenever they can. You can see him, he's a completely different person when he's around other people. I don't count because I am the wife and the caregiver. So no, I don't, I don't count in that respect. And what does it mean for our family? We have two. I mean, I'm just talking. Shira, if you want to jump in and stop me and ask me different questions. But we went on to have two more kids here there in New York when we came back with all three children, and they are now 19, 16, and almost 13. We're making the bar mitzvah in a few minutes. And thank God, as they got older, it definitely got a lot easier, but raising children and dealing with this and being a caregiver and working full time has definitely had its moments. And it's an ongoing, this is, people say, I'm so sorry, having a hard time. It's not a hard time. It is what it is. That's one of my sayings. I even have it on a t-shirt now. They're selling it at local stores here. So I went and got myself one. It just is. It is what it is. It's not something that you ever think about when, you're in your 20s and you're looking to get married. And, if my husband asks me every once in a while, would you have married me? I know you wouldn't have married. Like, it's a statement. He knows. Yeah, I know you wouldn't have married me if you had known. And I'm, who knows? But I'm not that kind of person. I don't look back and wish I had or hadn't. It just is. It is the life that we live in, and it's just a reality. There's no. I don't see. Yeah, go ahead. Interrupt me.
No, it's
just blah 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 forever.
Something that triggered a memory for me.
Yeah.
I think that one of the most shocking things that you said in your chapter was you were talking about the shame that you found that other families who had an individual with a diagnosis of MS had around the diagnosis. And I know that you started mentioning, specifically from a cultural perspective, because that's what you meant, that different cultures have different associations with illness. How do you feel about the fact that there's shame around illness in this way?
Well, it's very hard for me to understand, but it is something that I was just talking about this with my husband yesterday about the reasons why I'm sharing. He's gotten so much better because, like I said, he's a strong, or was a strong Moroccan man, Israeli, and was not very happy with me blabbing, and telling everybody about everything all the time. But that was my way of dealing with what I was dealing with. I have to talk it out and share it. And the more I talked and shared, I realized, like you were just saying, that there are people who are not speaking about, not one story in particular. We were at Tel Shomer, where actually one of the best multiple sclerosis centers in the world. And we were talking with another woman who has MS, someone my husband had met before in the center. We're talking, and I was asking her how old her kids are, and I was like, oh, that must be so difficult. You have MS, and I can't even imagine. Like, here I am, I'm raising children with someone who has MS, but you're the mother with MS, and what's that like? How do your kids feel about it? And she said, I haven't told my children. And I couldn't, I was so taken with that. It affected me so much that she hadn't even told her children. And I could understand why. She was trying to shield them, protect them. She didn't want them to suffer, to, know this hard, terrible thing. But I can't imagine hiding this or keeping it from anyone, but especially my children. It really affected me. There's another woman in our community who has told me that her children are ashamed of her. I can't have that. I can't let that be in the world. It just doesn't, it's so upsetting. It's so upsetting to me, that is, reality.
Yeah, Shara, we've talked a lot together over the years now, because we've been doing this for 3 years, about the role that storytelling plays in stigma breaking and dispelling shame. Your story is out in the world now. It's in this book. And what hope do you feel that do you have for what people will gain from it, from this sharing experience? What do you hope the outcome is from sharing?
When someone reads, well, already one of the other women that you wrote about in the book contacted me and made sure that she and that her mother and I connected. And her mother is now one of the members of a very private and secret Facebook group that I run for wives who are taking care of their husbands. So she's now in this group, and we're now, able to support each other and be open and honest and share and, struggle and laugh and tease and make fun and be frustrated and vent. And for me, it's very, very important. I belong to 2 other groups that are very key in my, being able to survive every day. One is a group of thousands of other people who are taking care of their loved ones with MS, and another one is people who are taking my husband's specific treatment, who are going through the same treatment. And I just think, sharing each other's experiences and learning from each other, and why reinvent the wheel and suffer through something when other people have already gone there and done that, and can share their advice and their experiences, and just to know that you're not alone in doing this. I cannot be the only person who is 48 years old and taking care of my 50-year-old husband for the past 20 years. Not possible. I'm not special. Definitely not unique. So if someone reads this and says, oh my goodness, I'm also going through that, then please get in touch with me, join our Facebook group. But also just know that, it's really hard, and there's a lot, and there's just so much, and you can't hold it all yourself. It's too damn hard, and it just spills over and affects everyone around you. So please find someone to share with. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It doesn't have to be me, but find your people who can understand what you're going through. I mean, listen, I've spoken to a lot of people, and that some people, right off the bat, just start like, sharing and telling, and then other people need time to really get there. There's no right or wrong way. There's no right or wrong way. But I think the fear and the shame, the shame comes from putting people off, embarrassing yourself, not knowing when to, how much to share, how much to go on and on about something. How I think initially when you're first letting it all out, it may be overwhelming. It may be, you talk too much, you share too much, you don't know how much to share. You just gotta jump in, or maybe to just dip your toe. You don't have to jump in all the way like some of us do, but holding it all yourself is
what you're describing, Shara, is exactly this. It's like exactly why we're here.
Exactly this.
It's like this community building. What you said, Ariel posted here on the chat. I cannot be the only person who experienced this. Right. Like that is like the purpose of the Layers Project. Is the purpose in general of why sharing stories is so important, because that's exactly the point. We haven't been and we won't be. And so thank you so much for your words tonight, for the chapter that you share in this book. I've already gotten so much feedback about all these women and how you're impacting other people's lives, because you're not the only one. And sometimes people feel like they are, and it's incredibly painful. And having chapters like
Lonely. It's incredibly lonely. It's
chapters
incredibly lonely.
bring light. They bring light into someone's life. So thank you, Shara.
Anyone is interested in joining the Facebook, the Facebook group, it's very private. You can't see in a private Facebook group, no one can see what you're writing or who is even a member of the group. So hit me up. Find me on Facebook. I'm very easy to find. Shara Shitri. There aren't many of us. Hit me up, send me a message, and we'll connect.
Well, Shara, thank you for your leadership. We need more people like you.
Sure. We need people like you. Thanks, Shira.
You're welcome. Thank you for doing this thing. Okay, Rebecca. We're on our last beautiful woman of the evening, Rebecca. Tell us what you shared in this chapter of the book.
Sure. So I'm Rebecca. I live on remote Menashe in Israel. I made Aliyah 4 years ago, this July. So 4 years. I'm currently in Swampscott, Massachusetts, visiting my family after a year and a half. So it's great. What did I share in my book? So a little bit about me. I was diagnosed with PCOS when I was 14. I knew I was going to have a hard time, like just in my mind, and also like the doctors told me to, but I knew I was going to have a hard time having kids. And I was right. So in the US, I ended up for quite a few years, and then I did IVF here in the US, and I had a son, and then I got pregnant really quickly. Miracle baby, all miracles, I guess. But and so I had another son, and we made Aliyah. We said, okay, time out. Everything is good. Let's live our dream. So we moved to remote Menashe, which is where my grandparents. It's a kibbutz. They founded it right after the war. It's like my safe place. It's an amazing, amazing place. I miss it so much.
Your kids are like generation there.
Yeah. We're 4 generations living on this kibbutz. My grandmother still lives there. She's 92, really feisty and awesome. And it's a dream. And, like a little bit after we moved, people started asking us, okay, where's your Sabra? Where's your native born Israeli child? And I said, well, it's not here yet. So that's all good. And about, 6 months into it, we decided, you know what, it's time. Let's try for that baby. And I kind of thought that like maybe it would be hard again, because it was hard, and I knew my second was a fluke, like with most cases. I just or not, I don't know. I just had this idea in my mind. And so I was like, okay, probably with this one will be IVF too. Probably with this one it will take a while. And I was ready for it. I thought. A few months later, I got a positive pregnancy test. And I was a little bit like wary of it because it just didn't seem right. And then like a week or 2 later, I started bleeding, and I figured, okay, it's a miscarriage. And I went to the doctors, and they said, no, it's nothing. And I said, no, it was something. I know it was something. And a month later, I went to my doctor, and she was like, oh, like, I see that you had a pregnancy and your fallopian tube is really enlarged, and I'm not supposed to be able to see it on the screen. So I think it was ectopic. If you get pregnant again, come back to me, because we need to make sure it's not ectopic again. And I said, okay, fine. And like maybe like a month or 2 later, I'd had a period. And I was like, okay, I have PCOS. It's like a long time sometimes. And it's different for everyone who has PCOS, and you know, sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. And then like 10 days later, I got another period, and I was like, whoa, that was unexpected. And that had never happened before. And I got a little bit nervous. So I went and I took a pregnancy test, and it was positive. Yes, it was all happening in Hebrew.
Part of the
And
story.
yeah, but everything was in Hebrew, and they don't teach body parts in Ulpan about, you know, what is this in Hebrew? What is this in Hebrew? And I was at a loss because I don't know. You know, like even learning like womb and ectopic pregnancy, I didn't know. And when I went to the doctor, she said, okay, we're going to monitor you. You know, it looks like you're pregnant. And eventually it just, the numbers weren't adding up, and, you know, they're supposed to double. It wasn't doubling. And she was like, my doctor was like, you know what, I don't see the pregnancy, but I just don't think this is good. And I already was feeling it. I didn't feel pregnant. Like I just felt gross, I guess is the only way I can describe it. I felt gross. And she was like, okay, well, you might have the most pain you've ever felt in your whole life. And so when you start feeling that, then you should go to the hospital. And I was like, oh, okay, great. That's great. And I ended up in the hospital like a day, no, there's no bedside manner, a day or two afterwards, like after Shavuot. I remember sitting through, like on our kibbutz, we have this really amazing like agricultural festival, harvest festival with the tractors and everything. And it was amazing. And I have these pictures of myself there. And every time I look at them, I just want to cry because I see myself going, you know, through this, and I started feeling pain there. And I ended up going to the hospital, and it just was like a downhill from there. No one understood me. It took a long time. It was really incredibly painful. My husband had strep throat, so he couldn't come visit me. I was a smart one, and I drove myself to the hospital thinking I'd be in and out of there. And I wasn't. So we have a one car and I had the car, and he had strep throat. And I was there for like 5 days. And it was really awful. And then I had a cyst from the pregnancy that wasn't, and they ended the pregnancy, and I didn't, it was really difficult.
Yeah. Rebecca, tell me, we talked a lot about when I interviewed you about feeling like you weren't able to share. Tell me a little bit about what was the outcome of not being able to share, and what did you learn when you learned that you could?
I felt really alone. I felt really, really alone. There weren't like any resources for me to go see what the Jewish take was on like ectopic pregnancies, about ending a pregnancy that couldn't happen. There just were no resources, and I just felt scared and so alone. I don't think I've ever cried so hard in my life, like trying to keep myself in check and say, you know what, this isn't real. Don't think about it. It's not real. And then being like, but it could be real. Maybe it's real. It is real. There's a pregnancy inside of you, but it's not going to work. And I was just so, it was so lonely. I was so alone. And I also, with the language barrier, I had a really hard time. There's no one there to support me, literally no one. And once I was able to share, all of a sudden I had people, you know, I remember the first time I told someone, and they were like, Rebecca, why didn't you tell me? I would have been there with you. I would have, and I was like, I didn't know how. Like, you're supposed to wait like until, you know, you're their first trimester, and you're supposed to wait. And what if it happened? And then I was early, and I should have said something, and I didn't. And that's like regret. I feel so much regret not giving myself the support that I needed. And once I shared, people started saying, oh, Rebecca, I had that too. Or let me help you make the doctor's appointments. Let me help you. Let me be like, tell me about it. And even the times that it was like somewhat awkward, where like someone didn't know what to say, it was okay. Like, it was okay. I could say what I needed to say and tell people, and people like listened to what I had to say, even if they didn't know what to say, because there isn't really anything to say.
So painful. That sense of loneliness is it's horrific. I've experienced it myself. It's so horrific. I remember when we first connected, we talked about what it would be like to let your story go and put it out into the world. So I guess my first question is, why did you decide to put this story in the book? Why are you here now today sharing your story? And what does it mean to you that you were able to let it go? To serve others?
I think that I was just living like in a life that I just felt so much shame. I also felt like, who would want to listen to me? Like, who would want to listen to hear what I have to say? Like, I'm a person who's had infertility, and then I could get pregnant too easily, but in the wrong place. And like, who would want to listen? And once I started, sharing my story, it was like a huge relief. It was a release. It was just like, all of a sudden I was like, you know what, like all that shame I was feeling, like, I don't need to be ashamed of like something that I had no control over. Like I was scared that my like not my immediate family, but some other, my family members would be, like, they would judge me. Okay. Like, who needs that? And by putting it in the book, when it first went, like when you first started like showing pictures of people, reading the book, I immediately started panicking a little bit. I was like, oh my gosh, someone's gonna read that story and be like, oh, she's the one. And I was like, no, people are reading it, and people are like maybe like, even I just need one person. If there's one person out there who can relate to it and say, here, like, oh my gosh, someone wants to listen to me, someone can listen to me, then like that's one thing. It's by putting in the book, sharing my story. I feel like I've become a better listener. Like I think that it's taught me to like to listen to myself, to listen to others, to be able to share other things, because it was just like a huge release. Like,
what a beautiful outcome. Well, I know for a fact, I mean, I'm reading the chat right now. Take a look at the chat when you get a chance, that there are people who have had similar experiences or can really deeply relate to your experience. And I think all of us can relate to the loneliness and the need to be heard. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for being here, for sharing your words and sharing your story and letting it go with me. It was a really transformative experience for me to write this story with you. And I'm really so honored to be a part of bringing it out into the world. So thank you
so much, Shira. No, really, like, I think part of my healing process was telling you the story. Like, you were amazing. So thank you.
It's an honor to be your friend.
Likewise.
I think that what Rebecca just said is something that I think is really important to close out on, which is this question of who would want to listen to me? I was talking to Rachel Herkman, who's the clinical director over at the Layers Project yesterday, and we were talking about this issue. She said something that was so brilliant. She said that when we're in a space of comparison, when we compare ourselves to other people, Ariel and I were talking about this the other day about, how now we're in this we're getting into this Elul time where we reflect on the year that we've had and we reflect on what we want going forward. And, when we're in a comparison headspace, we say, oh, this was my year. It wasn't as good. It was worse. It was this, it was that. And I think that there are two anecdotes to that. There are two ways to fix that. We can engage in self-compassion, where we can say, no, my story is important. People want to listen to me. These are 34 stories of average women. These are not people who you see in the news. I mean, maybe you do now, but before they weren't in the news. And they're just average women who are extraordinary in their resilience, in their commitment to themselves, in their ability to open themselves, crack themselves open, to share their growth with others for the purpose of healing themselves and everybody else. And that leads to the third thing. So we have comparison, compassion, and the last thing is contribution. What are we contributing to our communities, to our conversations? And our stories are our contribution, because our lived experiences are powerful, they're important. We're not the only ones who've ever experienced them, but the way that we've made meaning from it, no matter what we've experienced, absolutely can transcend barriers and really be a gift of healing to the people who are in your life. So we're going to close out with something really special that Ariella asked me to do. We're going to talk about the blessings that we want for ourselves for this upcoming year, since we're now entering this Elul time. We asked our panelists to come up with a blessing. I would ask all of you to take a minute and to think about for yourself, write it down on a little scrap of paper, on the back of an envelope. Just write a blessing for yourself. What is it that you wish for yourself for this coming up year? So Shara, why don't you give us something that you wish for yourself, that you bless yourself with for this year?
Really starting with me. You and I have spoken about self-care and what it means to put yourself first or put yourself at all. And it's a very, very difficult thing to do. It's a very difficult thing to think, even just take a moment to think about, what do I want? So when you asked me to write a bracha for myself, I didn't write anything, but I will go ahead and say that, I mean, we're moving, we're making a bar mitzvah. My daughter's drafting on Sunday, and we have a lot going on this summer and this life. And people keep saying, when it rains, it pours. I'm like, well, it's always raining, but yeah. Sometimes there's a tsunami. So my blessing for myself is that I have calm waters and some boredom in my life. And I have moments where I'm like, what should I do now? Because I got nothing. So that's my bracha for myself. Just some moments of pure nothingness where maybe I could just sit with my feet up, open a book, and look around and enjoy my life.
That would be beautiful. You can read the Layers book when you're doing that.
I do that. I do take moments to do that.
Everybody, as we're talking, feel free, if you would like to share your own blessings for yourself in the chat, so we can bless each other for this upcoming year. Michal, what do you bless yourself with this year?
So I'm working through things, as we all do. So I have to stop self-doubting myself. I've pivoted to another career within my own. I basically run 2 businesses now, and it's just understanding that I need to stop doubting myself, that I will be as successful in the second as I was in the first, that I am in the first, and then I have to believe that that this is right for me, and I need to just stop doubting myself. And my brother said this to me, and it's literally changed the way that I pray about myself and that I manifest or affirmations. So this is my new affirmation, and I thank him every day. He said he actually stopped praying for me to get married. And I actually was like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, what do you pray for? And he goes, I pray for you to be complete and happy. And it literally rocked my life. And I literally put it on Post-it notes all through my house. And it is my affirmation that I say every day, and that I'm praying that we all are, and especially me, that I'll have a happy and a complete year. And that's it.
You don't know how much it means to me to hear you say that, Michal, after everything that the journey that I've seen you go on. It's just beautiful. Amen. Amen. Rebecca, what do you bless yourself with?
Self-acceptance, self-love, and patience and hope, really. That's what I hope for myself, and I bless myself with. Just being able to be be happier with myself and, you know, being able to enjoy and find joy.
That's beautiful. Amen. I'm going to offer my blessing and then hand it back to Ariella, who's our wonderful host of this evening. And my blessing for myself is that I continue to have these meaningful and healing dialogues with women like you, to continue to be inspired by these incredible women who share with me, and for me to have the bravery to continue doing this vital work.
I don't have enough amen.
Man.
Amen. Yeah.
I feel, hold on, I need a minute. I feel like our hearts were just burst open. This is, I don't know if it's like we're not used to connecting with people like this. I don't know if it's that we need to do more of it because our hearts aren't used to feeling like this. I just need to say thank you. I wrote in the chat, and it's like I wish we could totally redesign Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur services and just like move away all of the front facing chairs and just sit in a giant sharing circle. I feel like that opportunity to look at what the heck else do we come into community with each other for than to learn from one another and show up for each other and share with each other. This was so, this is going to sit with me for a while, particularly I think walking into a high holidays that coupled this constant conversation of isolation, community, what is community? What am I by myself? Who do I need around me? Who do I gather around me when it's hard to do so? All of these questions are swirling this year. And this is what community, for me at least, means. This idea of having people, you know, when you're on the top of the world, and also when you're in those moments when you're not, because you'll get back up to the top at some point. We all do, but we need people on that journey. And thank you for doing this with us. I'm so appreciative to each one of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I would love to, I know we have a lot of new people here today, and I'm so thankful, and I want to respect everybody's time. Thank you for being with us. I'm going to put out a very gentle ask, as always, if you would consider showing support to our phenomenal speakers, showing them the respect for their time and their talent. Go to svivah.org/donate. If you don't mind, can you take 90 seconds and help SVIVAH do better? We're going to put a link for a 90-second survey for the conversations that we should have next, or how we can improve upon what we're doing, or what you'd like to see us do together. Please be with us again. You can join our closed SVIVAH Facebook group so that we can have more conversations like these and find one another. I also am going to urge everyone to go to Koren Publishers and use the discount code. You can use Layers 10 or SVIVAH and get 10% off. And I think they're having a sale. Yes?
Yes, they are.
They are having a
Also
sale.
on Amazon. It's also available on Amazon.
Ooh, fancy pants.
But you get it from Koren, and they've got great delivery. So
they do. And I would give my dog-eared copy to somebody, but I'm not letting it go just yet. And please go find the Layers Project and just eat it all up. It's layersprojectmagazine.com, and just enjoy the beautiful photography and the incredible women who are featured there. And I'm not going to wish a happy Rosh Hashanah just yet, because there's more SVIVAH to come. So you can find that on our website too. And I'm going to stick around, but I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, especially all the way across the world. The idea that we can be together is so amazing and such a gift. So thank you so much for being here, everybody. It's so nice.
thank you for having us. This was so beautiful and so wonderful to be with your community.
Thank you very, very much.
You're
Ariel?
amazing. Yes.
Can I ask them something quick?
Sure. If they can stick around, sure.
I had a question.